At 9:30 a.m., Knight Capital was worth $400 million. At 10:15, it was gone. Nobody pulled a trigger. A piece of dead code did. Knight Capital wasn't some garage startup. It handled almost 1 out of every 6 shares traded on the New York Stock Exchange. Quiet, boring, profitable, the kind of company nobody outside finance had heard of. And that was the point. Boring companies don't make headlines until the boring company detonates in 45 minutes, live, in front of the entire market. This isn't a story about a rogue trader. There was no villain in a corner office plotting anything. This is a story about 8 leftover computer servers and the 8 most expensive minutes of silence in Wall Street history. On July 27, 2012, Knight's engineers pushed new trading software to 7 of their 8 servers. One server didn't get the update. Old, dead code, a flag called PowerPeg, retired years earlier, was still sitting on that 8th machine, waiting. Nobody remembered it was there. At 9:30 a.m., the market opened. The new software went live. And on that 8th server, the new trigger accidentally reactivated the old dead code. PowerPeg started buying, and buying, and buying. Not according to any strategy, not according to any market signal. Just relentlessly mechanically executing thousands of orders a second on stocks nobody at Knight had told it to touch. The humans watched their screens fill with trades they hadn't authorized. Nobody could find the source. Nobody could shut it off. 45 minutes, that's how long it took to find one flag on one server. By the time they killed it, Knight had accidentally bought and sold $4 billion in stock, at a loss of $440 million. Here's the part that should terrify you more than the crash itself. There was no fraud, no hack, no malice anywhere in this story. Just a deployment checklist with one unchecked box. Knight's stock dropped 75% the next morning. The company that survived the 2008 crash, that had weathered a decade of volatility, was killed by its own IT department, forgetting to update one machine. Regulators later called it one of the most significant operational risk events ever recorded on a U.S. exchange. Not a crime, an operational risk event. Bureaucratic language for a company died because nobody checked a checkbox. Within 24 hours, Knight needed emergency capital just to survive the day. A consortium of investors bailed them out at a price that gutted existing shareholders down to a sliver of the company they used to own. 6 months later, Knight was absorbed into a competitor. The name disappeared, but the real question is, who signed off on that deployment? The industry's official story is simple. Human error, a rushed rollout, a tragic accident in an industry that moves too fast to double-check its own code. But here's what the incident reports don't headline. Knight's engineers had reused that server's old flag name for a brand new function in the update. The exact same trigger that used to mean test mode now meant live unlimited buying. Nobody renamed it. Nobody ran a full audit of legacy code paths before deployment. They didn't rebuild the system. They built on top of the wreckage of an old one and assumed the ghosts wouldn't wake up. And that was just the first 90 seconds. That's the twist that never makes the retrospectives. This wasn't a freak accident. It was the predictable result of a company treating software archaeology as optional. 9 years of accumulated legacy code, and the one time it mattered, nobody was reading the ruins. So what do you do with a story like this? You don't need to work in finance for this lesson to apply to you. Somewhere in your business, in your code base, in your process, there's an old flag nobody renamed. A temporary fix from 3 years ago still quietly running in production. The real question isn't whether Knight Capital made a mistake, it's whether you'd have caught it either.